Good morning everyone. This is Kamikawa Kaolin. Koreans lie. Chinese people were still better, is the word of an old lady who lived on the pre-war peninsula in South Korea, similar to China, for the benefit of our nation, our people, and our family for a long time. There is an ethical view that allows falsehood, distortion, and fabrication. Indeed, South Korea did not feel guilty, withdrew its previous words, and lied to lies. To win. Lies, forgery, fraud, tears, tells, threats, blackmail, takeovers, and so on. Just like a yakuza develop a victim business, using all means, and this is justice in Korea. It is no wonder that the world feels aversion to South Korea. Especially in South Korea, human rights violations against women and a sense of discrimination are terrible. While crying out an unlikely lie, forcibly recruited, and sex-slaved, to Japan, the truth is, Koreans themselves have made women sex slaves. No, they are still sex slaves. How do you explain the reality of this country, South Korea? South Korea has the fourth highest rate of rape in the world. Do Koreans understand this? According to the materials prepared by Static Brain from the 2014 UN statistics, etc., in terms of the number of rapes per 100,000 people, Lesotho in the southern part of the African continent is ranked first. Second place is Trinidad and Tobago, a small Caribbean country. Third place is Scandinavian Sweden, and Korea is in fourth place. It is said that 33.7 people are raped per 100,000 people in South Korea. Rape crimes in Japan are less than 2 per 100,000. The incidence of rape in South Korea is by far the worst in Asia. In fact, even in the 2012 crime analysis, released by the Supreme Public Prosecutor's Office in South Korea, it conveys the number and increasing trend of sex crimes. How are sex crimes reported in Korea? In this country, women who have been victims of rape, it is said that you will live in a living hell that makes you feel that it is better to be killed. Therefore, women who die by themselves, it is said that there are many women who cry and fall asleep while hiding the victims of rape. It is the tip of the iceberg that has been published. The truth is, there is still terrible persecution of women. While the Korean government is actively disseminating the comfort women issue overseas, in Korea, this reality that women are treated like slaves, don't you feel embarrassed? A prominent example is the harsh treatment of South Korea for women who have defected from North Korea. South Korean military prosecution on July 1, 2020, repeated sexual assault on a protected North Korean defector woman. He announced that he had charged 2 military intelligence personnel with rape and other charges. The sexual damage of North Korean defectors has been pointed out in the investigation so far. From a position and background that makes it difficult to file a complaint, it was extremely unusual to reach a trial as a criminal case in South Korea. A victim woman and a lawyer who filed a complaint against 2 men at the end of last year responded to an interview with the Tokyo Shimbun. He talked about a sneaky crime that took advantage of the anxiety of leaving his family in North Korea. Han So-eun, a North Korean defector who complains of sexual violence from South Korean military intelligence personnel. I blamed myself for dying. But if I keep silent, they will aim for another woman again. Han So-eun, a pseudonym, in his early 30s began to speak. Han, who came to Korea around 2015, in 2018, he was introduced by a police officer in charge of personal protection and met a man who was a member of the Armed Forces Information Command. Trust the man who feasts on delicious food and listens to his worries. I called my North Korean family and gave them the information I got. But a few months later, Han's younger brother was taken to a political crime camp in North Korea, and the man changed completely. He said, "I will help my brother by talking to the soldiers in the north," and controlled Han's impatient heart. Drink alcohol, sexually assault. When he knew he was pregnant, the man revealed that he had a wife and children and forced him to have an abortion. After that, the boss of the man who consulted about the damage also pressed Han for a relationship. It is a crime in which a man in a superior position exploited a North Korean defector whose life base is unstable. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and there are other similar victims. Attorney Young Soo-mi, who supports Han, says that he receives damage consultations from around 50 people every year. According to a questionnaire conducted by the Ministry of Women and Family in 2017, targeting about 160 North Korean defectors, about 25%, or 40 people, rape, forced obscenity, stalking, lewd phone calls, Sexual harassment. Since coming to Korea, he complained that he had suffered various sexual damages. Many of the perpetrators are the same North Korean defectors and ordinary Korean men. Attorney Young Soo-mi. In addition to Mr. Han, we have grasped more than 10 cases of damage from police and military officials. If the official is the perpetrator, victims are familiar with their addresses, mobile phones, SNS, friendships, etc. It seems that there is a strong tendency to hesitate to resist or report for fear of retaliation. I want you to be interested in South Korea's North Korean defectors policy and the problems of North Korean society. While the innovation Moon Jae-in administration is focusing on North-South reconciliation, it can be said that the settlement support measures for North Korean defectors are inadequate. According to a survey conducted in 2019 by the North-South Hana Foundation under the Ministry of Unification, there are about 33,000 North Korean defectors, 75% were women and 26% of North Korean defectors lived alone. North Korean defectors are monitored by local police and other authorities for 4 years in the name of personal protection. Another problem is that most of the people in charge are male police officers. Behind the vulnerabilities of North Korean defectors, North Korean society retains the prehistoric patriarchy. It is said that there are circumstances in which women are forced to obey men, including their fathers. Attorney Young Soo-mi. North Korea is neglected in sexual violence in male society. The woman who complained of the damage was despised for losing her chastity and suffered secondary damage. We should think about how to protect women who grew up in such an environment in South Korea. Instead of defending, take advantage of the other person's troubles. Police and even officials become perpetrators and attack women like sex slaves. This is the true picture of the country, Korea. What time was it happening? I'm amazed and my vacant mouth doesn't close. The appearance of such a socially positioned person abusing the vulnerable is it's not new. For example, An Hee-young, South Korean politician, governor of South Chungcheongnam-do. He served as governor of South Chungcheongnam-do July 2010 to March 2018 but resigned after being accused of sexual assault. On February 1, 2019, the Seoul High Court sentenced him to imprisonment with work in June of 3 years. On September 9, the same year, the sentence was confirmed by dismissing the appeal of the Supreme Court of Korea. An Hee-young. In 2013, he was selected as number 1 in the political field of 100 Next Generation Leaders of Current Affairs Journal. At the 6th National Simultaneous Local Elections held on June 4, 2014, Chung Jin-soo, born 1960, a candidate for governor of the Saenuri Party, was successfully re-elected by 8%. Having succeeded in re-election of the governor in Chungcheongnam-do, which has strong conservative power, expectations of loyalty, politicians who can expand beyond regions and philosophies, it is a person who has become more popular with the public. On April 3, 2017, he was defeated by Moon Jae-in in the party's primary election to select the official candidate of Democratic Party of Korea. He is the most influential president-elect candidate of the Democratic Party of Korea after the term of President Moon. He was the most important leader candidate. Held a competition for women in which members of women's groups participated. He always emphasized women's human rights, such as shouting women's happiness and human rights. However, on March 5, 2018, the political secretary appeared in the JTBC program, Newsroom, under his real name. He claimed to have been sexually assaulted and sexually harassed many times during his 8 months as a secretary. Although the secretary's office explained that it was initially agreed, immediately after, Yasu himself denied this and apologized. He announced that he would resign from governor of South Chungcheongnam-do on the same day, and announced that he would suspend all political activities. To the political secretary, who had no choice but to submit to the power of a popular governor and a powerful president-elect, what has been cheap is by disguising himself with words and deeds such as emphasizing human rights and gender equality that have been shown to the world. He was criticized for being just deceived. On August 14, 2018, the Western District Court of Seoul An Hee-young, who had been charged with sexually assaulting a former secretary several times, acquitted. However, on February 1, 2019, the Seoul High Court abandoned the first instance acquittal and he was sentenced to 3 years in prison and sentenced to June. On September 9, the same year, the Supreme Court of Korea dismissed the appeals of both the prosecution and the defense, and the decision was finalized. On July 6, 2020, President Moon Jae-in started at the funeral of An Hee-young's mother. It turns out that the ruling politician was giving a condolence flower, criticism was raised by the innovation opposition and human rights groups. Moreover, Ko-un, August 1, 1933, is a Korean poet and writer. As of 2015, poetry has been translated into 27 languages, according to the Korean media. It has been a candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature since around 2002. A person who was named every year. In 1960, published the first poetry collection, Higan Sakura. Immediately after that, he returned to the world and started his career as a writer. In 1980, he was arrested for violating the national security law along with Kim Dae-jung, who was a democratization activist in the field at that time. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 1982, he was released from prison for suspension of execution. In 1988, won the Mankai Literary Award from Creation and Criticism magazine. He is focusing on exchanges between North and South Korean writers and artists, and is also the delegation leader of the North-South Writers' Talks. He also teaches at Korea National University of Arts. At the time of the Inter-Korean Summit meeting in June 2000, he accompanied President Kim Dae-jung, and in front of the two leaders, I read a poem about my thoughts on unity. In 2014, he attended the unveiling ceremony of the statue of Comfort Woman erected in Suwon City, Gyeonggi Province, and dedicated poetry. Insisted on resigning from the Park Geun-hye administration in 2017. Actively participated in the candle rally that gave birth to the new President Moon Jae-in. He also published a poem related to it, so it was expected this year in Korea. Until the announcement of the Nobel Prize in Korea, he was revered as a representative of Korean literature, which is often noisy. However, in a new poem released by female poet Choi Young-mi at the end of 2017, while hiding the name of Takhagan as he accused him of habitual sexual harassment for quite some time. Choi said, he is an addict, he has suffered damage and witnessed sexual harassment multiple times. The number of victims is innumerable. Was exposed. Another male poet, Ryugan, said at midnight on the 7th of the same month. On my Facebook page, I'm sick and tired of it. The bad habits of the high silver poet, who has been open since the 1960s and 1970s, the reaction between the media and the writers who behave as if they had never heard of it is amazing. I confessed. Ryugan said, with him, high silver, as a representative of Korean literature, what are the people who have idolized as a symbol of Korean literature now? They pushed the high silver poet to the Nobel Prize in Literature, stand up, to make people around the world laugh. What kind of dirty, literary power, has been used from behind they who didn't do anything when they saw high silver sexual harassment in front of them or heard them with their ears? He is an accomplice and a principal. In front of me, it was right to immediately cut his high silver hand and slash his neck. Is it necessary to renew the category of XX internal violence in this country? Isn't the whole country just condensed into sexual violence? While already knowing sexual crimes including sexual harassment of high silver, which was famous in the neighborhood, before the uproar the media and literary people who were at the top of Korean literature are also accomplices. He criticized this type of sex crime as a problem in South Korea itself. In response to this incident, the city of Seoul, it was decided to remove the Room for All space that reproduces the high silver study set up in the Seoul Library. Further, Choi Jong-hoon is a former Korean singer and actor. He was a member of FT Island. On March 14, 2019, he withdrew from FT Island due to scandals and retired from the entertainment world. He is a close friend of former BIGBANG's VI Sungri because I was a member of that fellowship collective sexual assault, quasi-rape, and illegal obscene image dissemination. I caused drunk driving. 5 years in prison for sexual assault at first instance. On November 26, 2019, he was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison at the second instance on May 12, 2020. Young Junyoung is a Korean singer. Born in Seoul Special City. Shortly after birth, he moved to Jakarta due to his father's work. After that, he lives in many countries such as China, Japan, France and the Philippines. Therefore, he is fluent in English, Chinese, Japanese, Tagalog, and Korean. He has learned violin since the second grade of elementary school and has won prizes in competitions. Participated in the Korean music audition program, Superstar K4. In 2012, although his ability is insufficient, his star character is evaluated and he is ranked third. In May 2015, the album was released as a rock band, Young Young Band. In May 2016, the band name was changed to Drug Restaurant Korean version. March 21, 2019, voyeur sexual intercourse with multiple women, on suspicion of sharing the video in a group chat of KakaoTalk in which multiple entertainers participate, arrested by Korean police. 6 years in prison for sexual assault in trial on November 26, 2019. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison at the second instance on May 12, 2020. What is the Bucheon Police Station sexual torture case? A police misconduct incident that occurred in Bucheon, Gyeonggi-do, South Korea in June 1986. The Korean Police Department of Gyeonggi Province, currently Gyeonggi Regional Police Agency, Bucheon Police Station, currently Bucheon Sosago Police Station, forgery of resident registration card to work by misrepresenting career. I took a female student from Seoul National University, Kwon In-suk, to investigate. The female student generally admitted the alleged counterfeiting. However, the interrogator also decided to ask about the whereabouts of the suspect who was wanted in the Incheon uprising. On June 6 and 7, she sexually tortured female students and tried to make them talk. 1 month later, July 3, a female student filed a complaint against the Incheon District Public Prosecutor's Office on suspicion of forced obscenity. Subsequently, on July 5, the defense team filed a complaint against the chief of the police and other related parties for abuse of authority in addition to the interrogator. However, the police counter-accused the female student of defamation and criminal accusation. The dissident's sneakiness of using sex as a weapon for political movements was widely touted. The media also went along with this. On August 21, the prosecutor's office suspended the prosecution of the interrogator and dismissed other parties. The lawyers filed complaints with the Incheon District Public Prosecutor's Office and the Seoul District Public Prosecutor's Office, but they were rejected. It was also rejected by the Seoul High Court. It was finally accepted by the Supreme Court, and after 3 years of hearing, he sentenced the interrogator to 5 years in prison. The plaintiff's defense team at that time also included a human rights attorney, Park Won-soon. This incident strengthened the unity of the dissidents, and it had a great influence on the later democratization movement. Victim Kwon In-suk was in the 21st House of Representatives election in April 2020. Both the ruling party and the Democratic Party of Korea ran and were elected as proportional representatives. At that time, among college students who were aware of the issue of workers' rights, there were many people who worked as workers, camouflaged employment, at the actual work site. Win the trust of workers while working together, they raised their awareness of the problem and promoted the labor movement. Yoon Chong-young is a journalist in the Republic of Korea. He was a spokesman for the presidential secretary under the Park Geun-hye administration. The sexual harassment case was revealed during the first presidential visit to the United States and was dismissed. In the 2002 presidential election, he served as an assistant to the speech of the Grand National Party candidate Lee Hoi-chung. Election advisory member of the Central Election Commission in 2007. In 2009, he was vice president of the Newspaper Broadcast Editors Association. He runs a blog called Yoon Chong-young Columnist, and works as a columnist. In December 2012, he was appointed as the chief spokesman for Park Geun-hye, who was elected president-elect. After that, on February 24, 2013, he was appointed as a spokesman for the presidential secretary's office. President Park Geun-hye is visiting the United States on May 8, 2013, Yoon Chong-young told a Korean-American female intern interpreter who works at the embassy in the United States. He committed sexual harassment and was investigated by the police. Due to this problem, Yoon Chong-young returned to Korea in a hurry. The Korean presidential office said, "I acted inappropriately as a high-ranking official and hurt the dignity of the nation." Yoon Chong-young was dismissed as a spokesman for the presidential secretary's office on May 9, 2013. On July 20, 2013, Washington, D.C. police filed an arrest warrant against Yoon Chong-young. The case was selected as the second of the 8 major humiliation cases in the world in 2013 selected by China's state-owned Xinhua News Agency. Also, the keyword of Yoon Chong-young, sexual harassment, is it also ranked 6th in Korea's Google annual search ranking. President Moon Jae-in said, "Government and public institutions must take the lead in changing and setting an example." In the event of systematic concealment or secondary damage, strictly question the responsibilities of not only the perpetrators but also the top management and the secretary. A civil servant who accompanied him in September 2017 caused a similar incident, because it was discovered in 2018 that he had taken a light punishment and concealed the case without disclosing it. The Chosun Ilbo criticizes it. Dragon Flower Movement Gimjae-gun, Jeollabuk-do, South Korea. Cash Tsutsumi City, a cult religion headquartered at Ryukaji Temple in Qingdao. Extorting money from believers using doctrine as an excuse, it was discovered in 1962 that she had been sexually assaulting female believers and became a social problem. The founder is Shu Hakuichi. When arrested by police, admitted sexual assault. It only satisfied one of the three major human desires. If you suppress it, it will damage your trust. On the contrary, female believers who were supposed to be victims denied sexual assault, and 22 female believers accused human rights violations of having undergone a mass examination by the police. He appealed to the Korean Human Rights Association. Before dawn on March 27, 1966, when Shu Hakuichi was stabbed to death by a 23-year-old former congregation, the cult declined sharply. Drinking the water flowing through the tomb of the priest cures the disease. Some fanatics who believed that remained, but eventually fell. July 12, 1969, in the monthly magazine, Arirang, the writer Tak Myung-won and the editor who serialized the nonfiction, Yeon Fagyo, indicted by the Seoul Regional Prosecutor's Office on charges of producing and distributing nasty books. A suspended sentence was issued in 1971. Well, there are numerous cases of playing with women using their social status. Because public officials and police are such a rotten society, even more cruel and bizarre, such as rape cases of ordinary people, I hesitate to list them here. How can South Korea, which is not a decent country in such a world, blame Japan? You guys are not qualified to talk about Japan. I will tell you clearly here. The thief is fierce. I think you are the ones you have to accept. Koreans lie. Chinese people were still better, is the word of an old lady who lived on the pre-war peninsula. The Japanese, and people all over the world, should never forget this word. Don't be fooled by Korean lies. That's all.